Yes, Mr. Rowett.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. May I call now Richard Fletcher, please?
Yes, thank you.
That the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fletcher. Sit down, make yourself comfortable. Right? Yes, Mr. Rowett.
Good afternoon, Mr. Fletcher.
Good afternoon.
Can we start by, or can I start by asking you to give the inquiry your full name, please?
Richard Clayton Fletcher.
Thank you. And can I move on by, first of all, thanking you for coming to give evidence to us today. We're very grateful, first, for the witness statement that you've provided to us, but also, secondly, for your willingness to come and continue to assist the inquiry with its work. Just some preliminary matters, please. Firstly, everyone here will recognise that it is difficult asking residents of the tower to go back and think and answer questions about the 14th of June. It is important that you take your time. If you need a break at any time, please just say so and we'll stop. And the last thing is that hopefully, if my questions will be short and straightforward, but if at any time I ask something that you don't follow or don't understand, just tell me and I'll put the question in a different way.
Okay.
The focus of what I'm going to ask you about today is on what the inquiry describes as phase one, which is what happened on the night. Before we go on, what we next need to do as a formality is to put your statement into the record. Could we have, please, IWS 50913, page 1. Mr. Fletcher, if I explain to you, that's the first page of the witness statement that you've provided specifically to the inquiry. And obviously you can see it on the screen in front of you. If you prefer paper, there is a bundle in front of you, and you can you'll find a copy of the statement there. Could we go to page 24 in that statement, please? You can see that under the heading Statement of Truth, there's the date of the 20th of May 2018 and a signature. Can you confirm that that's your signature, please?
That's my signature, yes.
Have you had an opportunity to go over your statement recently?
Last night, yeah.
And can you confirm that the contents of the statement are true?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, there are no exhibits to put into the record.
Right, thank you.
Let's go back then to page 1 of the statement in paragraph 5, please. If we pick it up with paragraph 5, Mr. Fletcher, by June 2017, you'd lived in Grenfell Tower for approximately 16 years, is that right?
Yes.
And at that time, June 2017, you were living there with your wife, Hymanot Shaw, and your daughter, who was age 6 at the time. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
Were you a tenant?
Yes.
And who did you have the tenancy with?
I think TMO.
In your statement, you describe converting the flat from a one-bedroom flat to a two-bedroom flat to include a second bedroom for your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Could we have, please, MET 30125993 and page 12 of that document? If I just explain, Mr. Fletcher, what we're looking at is an outline plan of the layout of the 4th floor, but it's the same layout for all the floors as one goes up, so it matches what your floor would be. And on this plan, if we can expand it, flat 131 would be what's identified there as flat 1. Do you have it? It's just in the middle there behind the stairwell,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And that is the conventional layout where you've got a one-bedroom flat. So you've got bedroom next to kitchen, next to lounge.
Mhm.
If you could refer to, can you indicate where you created the second bedroom for your daughter?
Where would you like me to get it? Here or up there?
If you, whichever you
Whichever you
prefer.
prefer.
It's by,
Yeah, you did up there, that's fine.
Right on there.
Oh, I see. Yes.
so you took a portion of the living room off and made a bedroom.
Yes.
It's marked up on the drawing now, is that what you,
Yes.
correct? Yes,
Mhm.
thank you.
And if we stick to that plan, did you make any other modifications to the flat which would make it different from what we see?
That was the only modification, but actually at the time of the fire, it wasn't being used as a bedroom. My daughter didn't sleep there. So we tried it, but it didn't actually work.
Right. And if we could just look, again using the plan, can you just describe the route that you would have to take to get to the stairwell?
So, our front door is here. Front door is here. Come out. You turn right, and you go to the stairwell.
Thank you.
Now we know Grenfell Tower had lifts, but did you ever have occasions to use the stairwell?
Many occasions.
And on those occasions when you would have to use the stairwell, how long would it take for you to get from your front door to the door leading into the stairwell?
Seconds.
And do you remember the door to that stairwell opening out into the stairwell or opening into the...
Inwards.
Into the stairwell?
No, towards us, towards
Right,
me.
so you would have to pull it towards you?
Yes.
Before we leave the plan, we can see there that nearby were flats 2 and flats 3. So that would be flat 132 and 133. And we can see on there that I think we don't need you to point it out, but their front doors would open out into the same area that your front door would, wouldn't it?
Yes, pretty much.
We're going to jump around a little bit in your statement, so I'm going to now take you to page 21 of it. IWS 91321, please. Just expand paragraph 113. We know that there was a refurbishment of the tower. Did you get a new flat door as part of that refurbishment?
We did, yes.
And taking you back to June 2017, were there any gaps around the door?
No.
So there was, for example, no gaps between the base of the door and the floor?
No.
Did the door have a letterbox?
Yes.
Did it have an automatic closer?
It was broken. It originally had, and then it was replaced. And it broke, and then it was actually never replaced. So no, it didn't have. At the time of the fire, no, it didn't have. But originally it did have when they fitted it.
So taking you back to June 2017, you had a door without a working closer.
Yes.
What did you have to do to shut the door?
Physically shut the door.
And did you have to pull it too hard, or was it something that closed quite easily?
It was something you closed pretty easily.
And I just need to ask you, if you can, just to clarify one detail in paragraph 113, because there you've referred to RBKC coming and doing works on the door. Would it be more accurate to say that it would have been the TMO that would have done that?
Yes.
Let's look, please, at paragraph 115, which is just starts at the bottom of the page. What you mentioned there is the experience of having a power surge, and that was in 2016. In June 2017, were you experiencing power surges in your flat?
No. We had a problem with the electricity, but not a problem with the power surges. We couldn't find the correct company that was dealing with the power. And my wife had made a number of complaints because in our flat at that time was a key meter system. It wasn't working correctly.
Sorry, say, what kind of system?
A key meter system. And they weren't charging us. It wasn't working correctly.
Right.
So my wife had gone to, I think it was E.ON at the time, and had said to them that, well, you're not charging us and we don't want to get a bill in 12 months' time for $5,000. So can you sort this out for us? And we never got to the bottom of it, basically.
But at least you weren't cut off.
No.
No.
Let's look now, please, at the next page, page 22, and let's look at paragraph 117. There you mentioned you had an extractor fan in both the bathroom and the kitchen. And you say due to the extractor fan not being installed correctly, there used to be a draft which came through it. Just so that we can be clear, which extractor fan are you referring to there?
The kitchen.
And how did the draft come through that extractor fan?
As far as I understand it, the air was supposed to blow out from our kitchen outside, but the air came in both directions. So if the extractor wasn't physically on, the air would come the other way. So it didn't block the air in. So if the extractor wasn't on, there was constantly a breeze coming in.
And did you, when did you feel that breeze?
Whenever there was a wind.
And was it did you need to have a wind for that to happen? Did it vary at different times?
Not particularly, no.
And was it, did you have a kind of kitchen window where you had the extractor fan fitted into the window itself?
I think it was fitted into the wall as opposed to the window.
Could I take you back now, please, to paragraph 112? You say there, it was only when we were leaving the flat and opened the door that I believe the fire alarm went off in our flat. I do not remember the smoke alarm going off in our flat. Does that mean you had both a fire alarm in your flat and a smoke alarm?
We had a smoke alarm.
Right.
As far as I was concerned, it was a smoke alarm.
Right. So, how many smoke alarms did you have in the flat?
That I remember, one in the hallway. Not in the kitchen itself, one in the hallway.
So there's just one in the flat?
As I remember it, yeah.
And you didn't hear, we'll go on to the night in a moment, but you didn't hear any smoke alarm from your flat that night, is that right?
No, when we left the flat, because we left the door open, and when the smoke all rushed into our flat, then that set off the alarm in our flat.
Right.
But prior to that, there was no alarm. It was silent.
All right. Well, I'll come back to that when I ask you questions about the events of the night. Could I ask you just to be shown a photograph? Mr. Chairman, I give the usual warning. It's a photograph we've seen before. It's not distressing, but it was of the interior of the tower after the fire. Can we have, please, BLA 402513? Mr. Fletcher, if I could explain to you, this is a photograph that's taken on floor 6. What you can see in the ceiling is a white detector. Can you remember if there were similar detectors in the communal area or on your floor?
I can't remember, but it was more than likely.
Okay, can we go back, please, to page 3 in the statement, in paragraph 11. just to give you some background, Mr. Fletcher, this is the part of the statement where you deal with the events of the night, and you say that on the 13th of June you was at home watching television, and that night your wife had gone to bed, your daughter was already asleep. And if we pick it up at paragraph 11, I think you might want to just make a quick correction, but you say whilst watching TV you heard a fire engine arrive followed by a second fire engine, and this was at some time approaching 1 p.m. Do you think that should be 1 a.m. rather than 1 p.m.?
Yes.
Accepting that it is 1 a.m., can you help us with just how you knew what time it was when you saw these fire engines?
Because of the time that my wife went to work, what time that my wife went to bed, and I briefly flicked up the TV remote and it came up with the time. I think the time I checked it was about 12:50, so I sort of added on 5-10 minutes onto it. That's what I got to 1 a.m.
Thank you. Can we expand that now to, on the same page, to look at paragraphs 12 and 13, please? What you say in these paragraphs, Mr. Fletcher, is that you opened up the window in the living room, looked out, and you could see 3 fire engines, and then you saw a 4th fire engine arrive soon afterwards. And you estimate that after looking out, and we pick it up at paragraph 13, after looking out of the window, you then went to bed, and this was around 1 to 1:15 a.m. Again, just help us with how you're working out the time at this point.
Okay, so the first fire engine, in my estimation, was about 1 o'clock.
Well, if you look, I'm not sure what time I went to bed, but I estimate it was around 1 to 1:15.
Okay.
So you've been woken. You've got the arrival of the first fire engines at 1 a.m. You then see, when you look out the window, you see more vehicles. And then you give an estimate. You went back to bed at that point, or you went to bed at that point. I'm just asking for your assistance just with how you are timing things.
Okay, initially, I believe I heard the first fire engine about 1 a.m., excuse me. Second, third, I shut the window because it was a very warm night that night. So I shut the window because it was very noisy. Closed the blinds, went back to the movie, and I watched maybe 5-10 minutes of the movie. The sound, once the window was closed, it drowned out most of the sound of the fire engines. But I'd already seen the movie already. So I thought, let me go off to bed. So that was I watched about another 10 minutes of the movie, 10-15 minutes of the movie. Brushed my teeth, went to bed. That's how I get to about 1:15.
Thank you. If we bring up and go back to MET 30012593 on page 12 again, please. And just expand on flat 1, please. You've got your lounge there, and in your flat, all the windows face the same direction. Can you indicate which window you would have been looking out from?
Up here, you would like me to do?
Yes, please. So you moved from your living room to your kitchen.
What are we talking about? Initially,
Initially,
are we talking about initially when I saw the fire?
Yeah.
No, initially when I saw the fire. Sorry, when I
saw
heard the
first
fire engines.
Yeah.
Sorry. This one here, sorry. This one there.
And then from there, you then moved into...
And then from there, I gave the movie another 10 minutes, then I went to bed.
Okay, thank you. Now, we know that those windows face east, so what can you see from the windows of your home? Or what could you see?
That was a nice thing. We had a really nice view. We had a view looking back towards central London. So you could see the London Eye, you could see Millennium Wheel, you could see all that stuff from our window because we were also pretty high up. So the view was a nice view.
And in terms of buildings that were closer to you, what sort of buildings did you look out on?
We were looking down on the academy. And slightly to the right, you could see the sports centre.
Now, one of the points you make in your statement is that at the time that you assumed that the fire engines had arrived because someone had got stuck in the lift. Was that a common occurrence?
Not common, but it had happened before.
And when it had happened, you'd seen fire engines turn up?
Yes.
And when you went to bed that night, were the windows in the flat opened or closed?
No, I closed them because of the sound of the fire engines.
So you'd shut every window in the
Yes.
flat?
Yes.
Let's take you back to your statement, please, and let's look at paragraph 14. If I pick it up at the second sentence, you explained that it took you about 15 minutes to fall asleep, and then you continue, but very shortly after, at about 1:30 a.m., I was woken up not by the sound of a smoke alarm, but by a popping sound. In the background, I thought I could hear something going pop, pop, pop. I did not know if the sound was part of a dream I had just, or if it was real. Naturally, I was very drowsy, having just fallen into sleep. Once, obviously, the sound was loud enough to wake you up out of your sleep. Once you were fully awake, how loud was this pop sound?
It sounded like a firework was outside the window, but maybe on the ground. It didn't sound as if it was directly outside my window. It just sounded like a firework being let off on the ground.
And could you tell where it was coming from?
Not initially, no. It was just, but it was continuous. So that was what was the concern, was it kept going. It wasn't one or two pops, it was a continuous thing.
And so you're woken up by the noise, you get out of bed, and all you can hear is a continuous sound.
That's right, yeah.
And did it appear to be coming from outside your windows, but further down, close to the ground?
A distance away.
At that time, when you woke up, could you smell any smoke in the flat?
No.
Aside from the popping sound, was there anything else unusual?
No.
Can we go to page 4 of your statement, please? Paragraph 16. What you've described in this paragraph is looking out of your bedroom window and seeing an orange streak on the side of the building. When you're looking out of that window, was that streak to the left or to the right?
To the left.
Could you see how high up it was going?
It looked like the length of the building.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch the answer.
It looked like the length of the building.
And when you say that, did it look as if it was above your level?
It was to the left and above me.
Could you feel any heat at this time?
No.
And you don't remember at this point smelling any smoke or anything like that?
There was no smoke. There was no burning, there was no smoke.
So all there was just this streak?
Yes, all it was a popping sound. When I woke up, I opened the blinds, I looked up, and I saw this orange streak going down the side of the building. And that's the reason why I woke up my wife, because I didn't know what it was.
If we look on the same page at paragraph 18, please. You've described just in the preceding paragraph waking up your wife, and then you continue, we moved to the kitchen to look out the kitchen window to see if we could get a better view, as this was closer to where the light was. We still couldn't see what it was. So we moved to the living room, which was right next to the orange light. I opened the main blind in the living room, so saw fire along the whole length of the building, from the 19th floor down to the bottom of the tower. So is it the case that you had blinds on your windows, and so it was at this point that you lifted the blind and were able to properly see what was outside? That's
right, yeah. So initially we saw it in the bedroom, but we were a distance away from it, so we couldn't tell what it was. We moved to the kitchen, so we were a little closer, opened those blinds. It was a little clearer, and then we moved again to the living room. Now we were maybe 10, 12 meters away from it, and we could see it more clearly, and it took maybe 5, 10 seconds of looking at it before the penny dropped as to what it was, or what we thought it was at least.
And what did you think it was?
Initially, I thought it was a firework. I thought someone had let off a firework in their flat, and it was going down the side of the building. Then I thought that it's petrol, and someone has lit some petrol going down the side of the building, because it wasn't burning, it was just a light. And after we looked at it for the 10 seconds or so, we both looked at each other and we realized that it was more than likely a fire.
And what you've said is that it's along the length of the building from the 19th floor down. How could you tell that it had reached the 19th floor?
No, that's I said that in a statement, but I can't be as specific as that. I can't say it was the 19th floor. It could have been the 20th floor, it could have been the 22nd floor. It was above us to the left, but for me to say exactly what floor it was on, I cannot tell that.
It wasn't a case you opened up your window and looked out?
No.
And so it's obviously there at your floor level.
Yes.
How close was it to the window that you were looking out of?
The distance from where I'm sitting now to pretty much where you are.
So from you to me?
Yeah, pretty much.
And could you at that time then feel any heat?
I didn't feel anything. I was trying to figure out what it was, so no, I couldn't feel the heat at that stage, no.
You've told us how you, with your wife, moved from window to window. Did you notice any smell inside your flat or any smoke inside your flat?
No smell, no smoke in our flat, no. Not at that stage.
If we go, please, it's on the same page, but let's look at paragraph 20. In this paragraph, you've explained, Mr. Fletcher, that your wife went to the front door and opened the front door, which would obviously access the communal hallway. And you say you were behind her. Before she opened the door, was there any smoke coming through the front door into your flat?
No.
Any smoke coming through the letterbox?
No.
But what you then say is that as she opened the front door, thick black smoke rushed into the flat from the hallway. Obviously, your wife's at the door. Where were you?
Directly behind her.
And how long did she open the front door for?
A split second. Maybe 2 seconds the most.
And other than its colour and thickness, can you tell us anything else about that smoke?
What I can tell you is not like in the movies when you see smoke and you can see above the top of it and you can see the person. This is pitch black. You can't see anything. It's as if I closed my eyes. And when she opened the door, then we could feel the heat from whatever it was, from the fire. So she opened the door. I didn't even know she was running to the door. We were standing in the living room, looking at this flame, and before I knew it, she was running to the door. She was at the door. I was just following her, and before I knew it, she'd opened the door. I would have checked myself with the back of my hand for heat on the door and on the rest of it, but my wife didn't do that. She just opened the door, and as I said, it's not like you see in the movies where you can see anything. You can't see anything. We couldn't see a thing. So she quickly slammed the door, and then we realized that we were in big trouble.
And obviously, I think that night, before you were woken up, or before you were disturbed from watching television by the sound of fire engines arriving, were there any problems with the lights on the landing, in the communal hallway at all?
No, not as far as I'm concerned, no.
So they were on?
On the night of the fire, or
Yeah.
prior to that?
Well, on the night of the fire, were there any problems with the landing lights?
And on the night of the fire, you couldn't see a thing. So whether they were on or not, it didn't make no difference. You couldn't see.
I'm sorry, it's the way I phrased the question. Before you noticed anything amiss, at an earlier point in the evening, as far as you were aware, were the lights in the communal hallway working?
The majority of them, at least, yeah.
But then even for that split second when the door opened, you could see nothing but thick black smoke.
Yes.
And if you take it from sort of the ceiling down to the floor, did the smoke stop at any point, or?
It was the height of the ceiling.
And you mentioned that your wife just opened the door but didn't touch the door or feel it if it was hot or anything. Did you feel any heat coming from the hallway?
When she opened the door, yes.
And can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
It was not burning hot, but it was 10 degrees hotter than it was in the flat. It was a hot night. That night particularly was a warm night. So it was stuffy in the flat anyway because I had closed the windows because of the noise of the fire engines. When she opened the door, if the flat was 22, 23 degrees, it was maybe 30, 35 degrees when she opened the door. But you felt it as she opened the door, as if there's heat coming from there's a fire just outside the door.
And even though your wife slammed the door shut, did some of that smoke come into the flat?
A lot of the smoke came into the flat.
And into the hallway?
Into the hallway of our flat,
Of your flat?
Yes.
And did the smoke have any effect on you?
No.
And what about your wife?
No.
If we look at the next page, page 5, please, and just pick up paragraph, if we could expand paragraphs 21 through to 24, please. What you say is that I did not hear the sound of any smoke alarms, and I just want to clarify which alarms you're thinking of. Is that the alarm in your own property?
There were no smoke alarms, period. In the hallway, that we could hear the smoke alarm coming from the hallway or from our flat. So when the smoke rushed into our flat, it didn't set off the fire alarm that was in the hallway of our flat or the one in the communal area. It was silent.
And did you expect there to be an audible alarm, smoke alarm in the communal area?
Yes.
And what was it that gave you the view that there should be that alarm?
I'd had a conversation maybe a month before the fire with one of my neighbours on my floor, and we were laughing about the work that Ryden had done, the contractors. We had mentioned the fact that they had spent so much money on the refurb of the building, and he said to me they had done a good job, and I said to him, "You're being ridiculous. They've spent upwards of £10 million refurbing the building. Surely everything is working." Smoke alarms. I assumed that there were sprinklers in the building. I didn't know until after the fact that there were no sprinklers. I didn't know that the fire alarm weren't working in our building until after the fact. So I was saying to him, my neighbour, that I thought if they've invested so much money in the building, everything's working. That's what I assumed.
So your expectation was that if there was smoke in that communal hallway, an alarm would sound?
Yes.
Did you know anything about how the communal hallway was ventilated?
I'd noticed a couple of large vents in the corner, yeah.
And did you ever hear any noises from those large vents?
Yes, loud gusts of air coming through,
So
sporadically, yeah.
when you were using the hallway to get to and from your home, did you feel the movement of air? Or,
Not every time, but occasionally you would feel it, yes.
and can you tell us when would those occasions arise? When would you hear or feel those large gusts of air?
That I can't say.
So it wasn't as if it was a particular season of the year or a particular time of day?
No.
If we look at paragraph 22, you say that you and your wife walked back into your living room, didn't turn the lights on. It was dark and the room was now smoke-filled, but the flame from outside was illuminating the flat so we could see each other. And was the smoke that you're referring to, was that just the smoke that had come in from the front door?
Yeah, the way it's written there is not correct. The room wasn't smoke-filled.
Well, can you tell us what conditions were like in the living room?
The living room was there was smoke that had come in the living room from my wife initially opening the front door, but it wasn't smoke filled. There was smoke, but I could see my wife clear enough.
And obviously, you had the windows as well, where you looked out and seen these streak.
Mm-hmm.
Was any smoke coming in to into the flat from anywhere else other than the front door?
No.
What was the temperature like in your living room at that time?
At that stage, we noticed, or I noticed, it was getting slightly warmer, but it wasn't ridiculously hot.
And it was cooler than the heat that you'd noticed on the communal hallway?
Yes, because the flames were still a distance away from us.
Well, if we pick up on that, in paragraph 22, you refer to the flame from outside. Can you just clarify for us, what are you meaning there? Is it still a reference to the streak that you'd seen?
That's right, yeah.
Did you see any flames closer to the windows of your property?
So what I'd noticed, this all happened in a really quick space of time, but it looked like this orange streak, these flames were coming towards us. So it was going from left to right, so it was coming towards us.
Can I just jump forward, please, to the next page, page 6, and if we could have paragraphs 28 to 31 up on the screen. You've set out in your statement in detail, Mr. Fletcher, the various thought processes you went through about what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
But you and your wife had a discussion, and you came to a decision that you would need to leave.
Right.
What you say, and it's just the last sentence of paragraph 29, if you look at it. Well, we knew that nobody was coming and realised we had to figure this out for ourselves. How did you know that nobody was coming?
Because we were on the 16th floor. We realised that it was going to take them a period of time to get through the smoke, because we had seen how thick the smoke was, and because the flames were coming towards us, it felt like we didn't have a lot of time. If we had sat there, we didn't call anyone. If we had called the fire brigade or called anyone, we felt like we had minutes as opposed to hours to stay in the flat. So we didn't think anyone was going to come to us in time, basically.
And you've said in your statement that you were aware of the notices by the lift, weren't you?
Right, yeah.
And you were aware of the policy that you should stay in your property.
We'd made a joke about it, maybe a month before the fire, yeah.
And what was your position in relation to that policy?
My wife and I were taking my daughter to school one morning, and we noticed the notices, and we read it, and I said to my wife, well, if there's a fire, I'm going to be the last person to sit here and wait for the fire to come and catch me. So I always thought that had there been a fire, regardless if it was in our flat, on our floor, on our side of the building, wherever there was a fire, we were going to leave. So it was never a position that we were going to stay in the flat. That was never a thing.
What you say, and it's the start of paragraph 30, I've had lots of fire training through work. Did that training influence what you decided to do next?
Yes.
And in what way?
I was able to think a little clearer than maybe my wife, maybe some others, because I'd worked a few unpleasant incidents. I'd worked the day of the bombing in London. I'd worked that day. I work in the transport industry, so I'd end up working that 7/7. I was supposed to be in Russell Square that day. I ended up not being in Russell Square that day. So I had been close to a few incidents before. I'd seen serious RTCs, I'd seen fatalities, I'd seen a few things. So I was able to think a little bit clearer than maybe someone who hadn't seen something like that before.
If we just to keep the context, but what you explain then is that you conclude paragraph 30 by saying you were trying to figure out the safest way to get out and down from the tower. Your wife was walking around the living room, and you collected the things that you needed to take with you. If we go then to page 7, please, and look at paragraphs 33 to 37, please, or 33 to 36. Although you collected some things, you make the point in paragraph 33 that you had no shoes on, were just wearing pyjamas and shorts.
Right.
And then you went back to your front door with your wife collecting your daughter. You say, we did not know if the fire was at the front door. When we'd opened the front door before, we'd seen lots of thick black smoke, but no flames. Therefore, we thought there was a chance of getting out and down the stairs. Irrespective of whether there was fire there or not, we knew that down the stairs was our only chance. What your decision was that you and your family had to go back out into that communal hallway, wasn't it?
Right, that's right, yeah.
And so you would have to open that front door for a second time, wouldn't you?
That's correct, yes.
Before doing that, and as you're in your hallway, did you notice if any smoke was coming into the flat from the front door?
No smoke was coming in the flat.
What about from any other area of the property? Was there any smoke coming in? So would it be fair to say that at that time there was no signs of fire inside the flat?
There was no signs. What we did notice was the flames were coming closer. The flame from the outside of the building that we'd initially seen, as opposed to it being where you are, it was where the judge's computer is now. So it moved maybe 2-3 feet within a couple of minutes. So we knew the time was running out, basically.
Could we look, please, at paragraph 37? You set out there what happened next, that you told your wife to keep her head as low as possible where the air was clearer. And you say we left and crouched down low and took about 3 steps. We were immediately in thick black smoke, and apart from what seemed to be a phone light ahead of us, we could not see anything. We then heard our neighbour, a Turkish man, who was holding the phone with the light, told him there was a fire and he should get out. He'd opened the door to his flat, and I shouted at him, "Fire, fire, fire, get out." He went back into his flat and slammed shut the door. He lived in flat 133. I could not believe that he went back in. Now, we saw on the map that the door to flat 133 would be along the line from your front door, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. Just taking that paragraph in stages, when you say you crouched down low, how low did you have to go?
Hands and knees, pretty much. And
even doing that, what was the visibility like for you?
0. Well, 0. 5%. Because you couldn't physically see anything but the light from my neighbour's flat and phone. You could see that, but you couldn't see the shape of him. You couldn't see anything like that, no.
So the only light source you could make out as you opened your front door was any light coming from his front door and his mobile phone light?
That's right, yeah.
Did you protect yourself in any way? Did you have anything covering your mouths at all?
No.
So, again, it's thick black smoke. Did that smoke have any physical effect on you?
No.
And this time, what was the temperature like in the lobby? I've called it a lobby, a communal hall area.
Okay. Again, probably the same temperature as we went in earlier, maybe mid-30s as far as centigrade.
And this sight of thick black smoke and a hot environment, was that immediately, did you encounter that immediately on opening your front door?
Yes.
Could you hear any noises or sounds in the communal hallway?
It was silent.
So How did you then find your way to the stairs?
I don't know.
And was it a case of just holding onto your wife's hand and just feeling your way through?
What I can tell you is, I don't want to sound dramatic, but I didn't find my way. We just made our way. I don't know how we made our way because it was a stab in the dark. We couldn't see where we were going. It was guesstimation. We knew approximately where the door was, but I don't know if I took 3 steps, 5 steps, went too far, came back. I kind of blacked out with that bit. So I don't remember making my way to the door. I remember getting into the stairwell, but I don't remember the few seconds it took for us to get from our flat to the stairwell. Actually, my memory is, I don't remember that bit. Not clearly anyway.
Do you remember whether, when you got to the door that leads into the stairwell, whether that door was open or closed?
It was closed.
And so, were you the person who, was it you who had to open the door?
Yes.
And once you'd got into the stairwell, did the door automatically close behind you?
Yes, it did.
Did you see anyone else in the stairwell in the area of the door?
At that stage, as we initially went through the door?
Yes.
We saw someone, maybe a flight of stairs below us.
I'm so sorry, I didn't quite catch your last.
Just below us, there was a person, a flight of stairs below us.
Right. So, but there wasn't anybody on that floor of the stairwell?
No.
And the person, a flight of stairs below, was that the only person you saw on the stairwell at that time?
He was with someone else.
Okay. Well, I'll come back to that if I
Okay.
may. Can you just... You've told us what you encountered in the communal hallway. Can you... what were the conditions in the stairwell like?
It was clear. You could see, and the lights were on, and the air was fresh, and you could see what was happening.
And was any of that smoke that was in the communal hallway coming into the stairwell?
So what happened was, when we got onto the stairwell, I looked up and I looked down because we weren't sure if we were walking down the stairs into the fire. So before we started walking down the stairs, I looked down and I looked up, and people that were coming from their hallway onto the stairwell, they were opening the doors, the fire doors, and smoke was coming in as they opened their doors. But there wasn't a source of fire in the stairwell.
Mr. Chairman, I've just noticed the time. And
Yes, how are you getting on?
I'm a good way through. I'd probably be a little bit more than, probably more than an additional 10 minutes. But perhaps what we could do is if we could have a break now, I'll also use that break to see if there's any other questions that others might want me to ask.
We're not short of time, so we don't need to rush that aspect. Mr. Fletcher, we usually have a break after we've been running 45 minutes to an hour. Would you like a break now?
No problem.
Yeah. Well, would you rather carry on?
Whatever suits.
All right. Well, why don't you go on for another 10 or 15 minutes, and if you haven't finished by 3:15, we'll definitely have a break. All right? Is that all right by you?
That's fine.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's just look at page 8 of your statement, and just please expand paragraphs 38 to 39, please. So in paragraph 38 deals with your making it to the stairwell, and you say, I'd estimate that we entered the stairwell sometime between 1:20 and 1:25. Again, if you can just help us with how you're estimating time at this point.
From the time I went to bed to the time that I woke up to the time that we made the decision to come out the flat. I mean, from the time that we woke up, the time to actually get out the flat, that was minutes. That was 2-3 minutes tops. So that's where I come to the estimate. But as far as 5 to 10 minutes to get down the stairs, closer to 5 than 10. Pretty sure of that.
Mm.
And you told us that when you got into the stairwell, it was clear.
Mm-hmm.
Could you hear any fans at all?
Not that I noticed, no.
Could you feel any movement of air in the stairwell?
Just the heat as people opened the emergency exits, the exits to the stairwell. So the warm air would rush in as they opened the emergency exits, and the smoke would rush in as well.
But you didn't feel any. Did you feel any movement of cool air?
No, not particularly, no.
Could we look on the same page? Just let's go to the bottom paragraph, paragraph 45. Just summarise that paragraph for you, Mr. Fletcher. You explain here that you took your daughter from your wife who'd been carrying her up until that point. And you then continue that there was smoke coming downwards from the higher floors and then coming up from floors due to people opening the fire doors, which was letting the smoke through. However, the smoke was not so thick that it was not possible to see. As we came out of our flat, the communal landing directly outside our flat was engulfed in smoke and you could not see anything. So, from where you were, what was it that made you conclude that people at floors higher to you were opening the doors?
How else would the smoke come out?
So, did you, and was it this, did you...
You could hear the doors closing. You could hear the doors opening and closing. The fire doors opening and closing, slamming closed.
And that was above you, as well as below?
Both. That was both above and below.
Did you then, were you then aware of smoke filtering down from above you and also from below?
Yes, but we weren't focusing on that.
Was it any different from the smoke that you'd encountered in the communal hallway?
That I couldn't say. We weren't examining it, so I couldn't say that.
You've told us you could hear doors opening and closing.
Right.
Did you, were you aware of people moving on the stairwell above you?
Yes.
And which, were you aware, was it your sense that people were coming down towards you or moving away from you?
Coming down.
And what about below you? Were you aware of people?
So no one was coming up that we saw.
So you then began going down the stairwell. As you went down the stairs, did you see any doors that would exit into communal hallways that were propped open in any way?
No.
If we go to paragraph 54, which is on page 10, please. And what you've said there is that when you reached the 6th floor, there was smoke below us, and I thought this was where we were going to have to stop heading down using the stairs and jump from a window. This is a terrible thought to have to contemplate when you realise it involves your young child. However, after the 6th floor, the smoke started to fade slightly, and we were able to continue. So, if just so that I can understand it, you've come down from the 16th floor, and you noticed by the 6th floor that there's smoke below you. Did you have a sense that there was that the smoke below you was denser than that which you'd come from?
On the statement it says the 6th floor, but that's a guesstimate. The one thing is that the numbering of the floors wasn't clear, so I was trying to count backwards. But at the same time, there were a few people on the stairs, and I was carrying my daughter. So it said the 6th floor, but it may not be the 6th floor. It may be the 8th floor. It may be the 5th floor. I don't know 100% that it was the 6th floor, but it was a lower floor. It was approximately the 6th floor, and it looked like someone opened the fire door, but as opposed to the smoke dispersing quickly, it had lingered for a bit. So my thinking was maybe the fire was there. And once we were going to get trapped. We won't be able to go any further. So we would have to hop off at the floor above and then contemplate jumping. So I was trying to count backwards to see how far down we were, to see how feasible it was to jump, basically.
What you do say is that when you were going down the stairs, you came across someone called Mr. Shah and another person.
Yeah.
Did you see anyone on the stairs from your floor?
No one from my floor, no.
Did any firefighters pass you in the stairwell?
We passed the firefighters when we got to, I think it's the 2nd floor, where we saw glass. That's where we saw the firefighters, not in the main stairwell, no.
If we look in the same page, but at paragraph 52, please. You say, I think one man passed us on his way up to the tower, saying he was going to go upwards in the tower. Presumably he felt this was the best course of action to avoid the fire. I did not recognise this man heading upstairs. I cannot remember if he said anything to me, but I assume that he was heading upwards to try and escape from the fire below. But you decided to just keep going down. Although you didn't recognise him, was he a resident of the tower? Or someone who'd been in the tower that night?
That I couldn't say. I don't know.
And did you see where he went after he passed you?
We weren't watching to see where people went, no.
Can you help us at all? Can you describe him? Can you remember anything about this man?
I can describe the few people that were coming down with us. Mr. Shah and his wife, Mohammed Razul, he was helping an elderly gentleman, and there was a couple of children on the stairwell. But when we left, or when we were leaving, there were literally 5, 8 people the most on the stairwell. There wasn't many people at all.
Well, let's go to page 11 of your statement, please. And could we have paragraph 58? This is going back to an answer you gave a few minutes ago about encountering firefighters, and you explained there where you met firefighters. And just so that we can be clear about that encounter, did any of these firefighters ask you which floor or flat you'd come from?
They didn't acknowledge us at all.
Now, in your statement, and I can take you to the page if you need it, but you say that you left the area at around 1:50 a.m. Had any firefighter or police officer asked you which floor or flat you'd come from by the time you left the area?
No one spoke to us. The only person we spoke to were residents that were coming out from the local area who were asking if we were okay, but no official, no policeman, no fireman, no one on the scene spoke to us now.
And did you hear anyone directing people coming out of the tower to a point where they could give details?
There was no one directing anything. When we left, there was no one directing anything. It was very haphazard at that time. The thing that upset me, annoyed me at the time was when we left the actual building, the front door of the building, it was described by the earlier witness, there was bits of debris that was falling from the building, large chunks of plastic, burning plastic. And they were dropping close to us. They were dropping 10 meters away from us maybe. And because obviously they're dropping from a height, they're dropping and they're exploding when they hit the ground. And there was no one ushering us to be on the right-hand side, away from the building that these fallen debris was happening. So I don't know if it's in my statement, but I had made a bad joke to my wife that we'd survived the burning building and now we're going to get killed by this falling masonry.
Mr. Chairman, I have now reached the end of my questions, but...
well, that's a good time to have a break, isn't it?
Yes.
Mr. Fletcher, we will have a short break now because Mr. Rawat needs a little opportunity to check whether he's asked all the right questions, and others may want to suggest other questions. So we're going to have a break and we'll come back at 3:20. I have to ask you please not to talk to anyone about your evidence when we're out of the room.
Okay.
And if you'd like to go with the usher now, she'll look after you. As I say, we'll resume at 3:20.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Right, 3:20, please. Well, Mr. Rabbit, you found some more questions.
Well, there's just one matter that we'll need to cover with
yes,
Mr. Fletcher.
That's all right, of course. I think there's just one or two matters that needs to be covered now.
No
Yes.
problem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fletcher. Can I, before dealing with one final matter, thank you once again for coming to give evidence to us today. It has been enormously helpful.
Thank you.
Everyone here will have read your written statement and the details in that. Above what you have put in your written statement and above the answers that you've given to the questions I've asked today, is there anything else that you saw or heard on that night that you think it important for the chairman to know?
I just feel that on the night of the fire, had there been someone directing people to come out of the building, a lot of the people would have been saved. Had the fire alarms been working on the landings, a lot of the people would have been saved. Just the fact that I assumed, because of the refurb, all his equipment was working. I didn't know. I was shocked when we went on the ladder and it was full of smoke, because I assumed that the smoke alarms would have gone off. So I don't understand how no one has been held accountable for that, and how, if I'm looking at the fire and I'm not an experienced fireman and I can see that the speed of the fire, why was no one, a senior fireman, I'm not talking about the fireman that came into the building, because obviously they did amazing work, they were trying to save people, but why was no one downstairs saying, this fire is not behaving like a normal fire, let's evacuate as many people as possible? I don't understand why that's the case.
All right.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Fletcher.
Well, Mr. Fletcher, I want to thank you very much for coming to give your evidence. It can't have been easy to relive a night like that. If I may say so, you showed a great coolness of judgment to get you and your family out of your building, and I'm very glad you did escape. And thank you very much for coming to tell us all about it.
Thank you.
Right. Would you like to go now? You feel free to
Thanks.
go if you'd like to go with the usher. She'll look after you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr.
can I just to use some of the remaining time just to put two statements into the record, if I may?
Yes.
The reason for doing so is that the authors of these statements are closely linked to the two witnesses that we've heard from today,
Right.
and their experiences therefore add important context to today's oral evidence. I want
Yes.
to read sections from these statements, but as we've already made clear, the whole of each statement stands in full as evidence to the inquiry.
Yes, thank you.
The first statement, Mr. Chairman, is that of David Lewis.
Yes.
It is at IWS 50297.
Yes, thank
It's a
you.
6-page statement, and if we go to page 5, there is a statement of truth there. It's signed and dated on the 18th of May 2018.
Yes.
And there is one exhibit with it, which is a plan, and the reference for that is IWS 50303. Before I start reading some extracts from the statement, just to give it some context, Mr. Lewis is the former partner of Mariko Toyoshima-Lewis, who we heard from this morning.
Yes.
As Ms. Toyoshima-Lewis explained, she'd lived with the couple's 3 children in flat 9 of Grenfell Tower since summer 2016. Mr. Lewis was a regular visitor to the flat throughout the year, and he was present in the flat on the 9th of 13th of June, and in fact he was awake, as Ms. Toyoshima-Lewis told us, keeping an eye on one of their children who was unwell. If I pick it up then from paragraph 8, which is on page 2, So IWS 502972, please.
Yes, thank you.
And the heading above that paragraph is Experience of the Fire in Grenfell Tower. And the statement continues, at some point I started to see orange sparks out of the window immediately to my left. The sparks were just floating in the air and moving very slowly downward. There were only a few sparks at this point. I just thought it was someone outside of the building messing around with fireworks. I noticed these sparks at around a few minutes prior to 1 a.m. A few minutes later, in that same period of first looking out of the window, I started to see larger items on fire falling down. I did not know what this was at the time, but I now understand that this was the cladding. The pieces falling down were large, around 6 foot across. The way they were falling gave the impression of being light. I woke up Mariko and then she took control, telling me, get the kids' clothes ready, and calling 999. My memory then becomes hazy in terms of what happened and the exact timings. I can remember some detail, which I will describe here. However, there are some details which I cannot remember. In general, while in the flat, I did not see any evidence of firefighting taking place outside, and I did not hear any fire alarms at any time. Children and I moved into the living room at about 1:20 a.m. We went into the corner of the room marked S on the plan, X on the plan exhibited to this statement, Exhibit DL1, because, based on our view of the fire from the bedroom window, this corner seemed to be the furthest from the fire. The 999 operator advised us to go to the coolest place in the flat. I know that Mariko has said that she could feel the heat of the fire, but I didn't find it hot, and at no time throughout the evening did I see any smoke coming into the flat. I stayed in the corner with the children. They were using the iPad, and I was just trying to keep them occupied. I was quite impressed because, a name has been redacted, knew about keeping low to the ground to remain in clean air. I'm not sure where he learned that. We could see fire officers and police out of the window in the living room. Mariko tried to shout to get their assistance, but I don't think they could hear her. At one point, I'm not sure if I was in the living room or elsewhere in the flat, I heard noises outside of the flat, but inside of the building. I either opened the front door or looked through the spy hole, I'm not sure which, and I saw fire hoses in the landing and running towards the stairwell door. I cannot remember anything clear about where exactly the fire hoses were in the landing, but I have drawn their general location on the plan exhibited to this statement, Exhibit DL1. I did not see any firemen when I looked out. The fire officers came to the flat at one point and banged on the door. I don't remember exactly how the door worked, but I remember us looking for the key and trying to unlock it so they would not have to knock it down. I do not remember us finding the key, but we managed to get the door unlocked and the firefighters came into the flat. There was a quick discussion between Mariko and the firefighters, and Mariko was saying, "Get the kids out." The firefighters told us to go, so I took the kids and we headed straight down the stairs. No firefighters or other escort came with us. I did not see any signs of smoke anywhere. Everywhere smelt the same, as it always did before the fire. When we got down to the first floor of the tower, there were about 6 firefighters all just standing around. They just told us to get out. We walked down to the ground floor atrium. I think in this place, which I also call the atrium, I could hear a faint alarm. When we got there, it was deserted and there was no guidance about where to go, but it was still relatively early in the fire, so I can understand why this was the case. We exited out of the main entrance. And that's, Mr. Chairman, is where I propose to stop reading.
Right, thank you.
The second statement that I'd like to put into the record at this point is the statement of Jaime Hymenot Gashore, who's the wife of Richard Fletcher, from whom we've just heard.
Yes.
She lived in flat 131 with her husband and their daughter. The statement reference is at IWS 50990. It's a 15-page statement. And if we go to page 15, there is a statement of truth. And it's signed and dated 20th of May 2018. And Mrs. Gashore has explain that she's known as Jaime Hymenot Gashore, also known as Hymenot Gashore. And I just proposed again to read some paragraphs from this statement. And again, just to give it context, as we heard, Mr. Fletcher was awake watching television whilst Mrs. Gashore and their daughter were asleep. And around 1 a.m., Mr. Fletcher woke Mrs. Gashore up. And under the heading on paragraph 14 on IWS 9903, under the heading My Experience of the Fire, Mrs. Gashore says, having looked out the window and seeing the fire, I went to our front door and opened it. As I did, smoke came pouring in through the open door from the communal outside landing. Smoke outside the door was black and thick, and even in the brief time the door was open, smoke poured into our flat. I slammed the door shut and said to Richard that we can't take, and there's then reference to their daughter's name, which has been redacted, out in that, or words to that effect. He replied that we had to get out and pointed to the living room window where we could see the fire outside. I could hear the flames and something, possibly the cladding, popping, and it felt like the flames were going to burst in from outside and engulf us. My first thought was that there had been a terrorist attack. I went back into our bedroom and picked up, the name of the couple's daughter has been redacted there, and Richard picked up some bits. We had no shoes on. We then opened the door and carefully stepped out onto the landing. The smoke was black and you couldn't see anything. There were no flames, just the thick black smoke. I was just expecting the flames to suddenly appear and engulf us. There was thick smoke outside of our flat on the landing. You couldn't see anything. We saw the man opposite from flat 133, and I think Richard shouted to him that there was a fire, but he went back into his flat. I now know that he was subsequently rescued by the firefighters. We had decided the best plan was to try and go down towards the front exit of the tower using the stairs. We knew not to use the lift as a matter of common sense, and I'm a fire marshal at work. I had never been told by anyone, RBKC, not to use the lifts in the event of a fire. There were no signs stating this. The only sign by the lift was a stay put sign, i.e. if there was a fire, you should remain in your flat. Richard took name of daughter's been redacted off me, as she's quite heavy, and we went down the stairs with Richard carrying daughter. I'm not sure which of us was in front. We went slowly down the stairs to make sure we did not fall. However, once we were on the emergency stairwell and heading down the stairs, the smoke, much lighter and no longer thick. The smoke was much thicker outside of our flat than it was on the stairs. On the stairs, the smoke was coming down from above. It seemed to be coming through the fire doors above leading onto the stairwell, as people were opening the emergency doors to escape via the stairwell. We only passed a couple of people. One of these was Mr. Shah, who was walking down the stairs with a pair of trousers in his hand. He was crying, "My house, my house." I also remember two little girls and a woman, and I think that they were heading downstairs. I do not remember which floor this was. It was possibly a low floor. We overtook them as they appeared relatively relaxed and maybe did not realize the extent of the fire. It is hard to remember such details due to not being able to see much because of the smoke on our level. It cleared as we made our way downwards, as well as the fact that we were in a terrifying situation. The smoke was clearer on the stairs than it was on the landing outside of our flat. However, there was some smoke on the stairs which was coming down from the higher levels through the fire doors as people above us opened them. We kept going down until we reached the floor level with a glass lobby staging floor, possibly the second floor, and this was where we saw the firefighters. When we saw the firefighters, and knowing that this floor level of the tower was at the bottom, we then realized that we were going to make it. As stated above, we encountered the firefighters at about the first or second floor on the glass staging level. This was the first time we saw firefighters. The firefighters didn't say anything to us. They didn't even acknowledge us, but clearly they were focused on going into the fire. Mr. Chairman, that's as much as I propose to read. in
Yes,
relation to that statement.
and I think for the benefit of Mrs. Gashaw and everybody else, we should just confirm that the whole of her statement will go into the inquiry record and will form part of the evidence which will be considered in due course.
And but both individuals who've made the statements have the thanks of the inquiry for doing so.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, can I raise one final matter?
Yes.
And that is in relation to the programme for Monday.
Yes.
We were due to hear on Monday morning from Nicholas Burton. For personal reasons, Mr. Burton can't attend on Monday. But we still have one witness listed for the afternoon. We're making inquiries as to whether she will be able to come in the morning.
Yeah.
But she will be heard either in the morning or the afternoon. Either way, there will be work for us to do that will take up hearing time.
Yes. Well, thank you for clarifying that position. We'll see when the witness for Monday is able to be here. But in any event, we will sit at 10 o'clock
Yes, please.
and do whatever work there is then to be done.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. We'll break now and resume at 10 o'clock on Monday then, please. Thank you.